I never did an abortion for an indicated reason. It was all basically convenience.
I did 1,200 abortions, first and second trimester. One was for rape, 2 were for incest, about 9 or 10 were for genetic defects like trisomy 21, and all the rest of them were healthy moms and healthy kids.
My name is Claire Colwell. I am an abortion survivor. I accidentally survived the abortion procedure that successfully aborted my twin.
My name is Emily Rarick. I had 2 abortions and live with abortion regret.
My name is Gigi Davis. I had 5 abortions and lived with abortion regret for almost 10 years.
I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a former abortionist who performed over 1,200 first and second trimester abortions early in my career, and I stopped doing abortions in 1984 and got involved in the pro-life movement.
My name is Dr. Kathy Altman. I'm also an OBGYN, and I used to do abortions until after the birth of my baby, when I realized I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted.
I'm Dr. Haywood Robinson. I'm a retired family physician and former abortionist, saved by the Lord Jesus Christ, who's now a pro-life warrior, and thankful to be so.
I'm Jill Stanek. I'm a former labor and delivery nurse who held an abortion survivor and compelled me to become a pro-life activist right away. I went to work at Christ Hospital thinking on the southwest side of Chicago, thinking that I would be safe from moral and ethical dilemmas like abortion, because who would think that a hospital named Christ could possibly be involved in such a thing? But I came to work one night in my capacity as labor and delivery nurse and heard and report 2 terrible blows. One was finding out that the hospital was involved in late-term abortions, and the second was finding out that there was a second trimester baby with Down syndrome being aborted that night. The method of abortion that the hospital used was called induced labor abortion, and that is just inducing labor, expecting the baby to die during the birth process or soon after. I was pro-life and I didn't have to involve myself, but one night a nursing coworker was taking another little baby who'd been aborted because he had Down syndrome to the soiled utility room to die, which is where they went. And when she told me what she was doing, I couldn't bear the thought of this little child dying alone, and so I cradled and rocked him for the 45 minutes that he lived. He was 21 and a half weeks old, about 8 ounces, and needless to say, that was a life-changing event, and just the trajectory was that I immediately became involved in the pro-life movement as an activist.
Wow.
I'd like to ask the former abortion doctors something that I've heard in the past, that at a certain point, committing abortions can become kind of like a bloodlust to certain abortionists, and you know, they get some sort of, I don't want to say thrill, but positive feeling from committing abortions. And I wonder, not that you experienced that, but have you heard that? Have you seen it?
I felt I was doing something really good, and so I was very proud of what I was doing. And I'll have to say, as I was, and it embarrasses me to say this, but when I was learning to do D&E abortions, it's such a challenge, you know, technically, that I felt really proud of what I was doing, and it was sort of, oh, the bigger the better. That's a terrible thing to say, but that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Blocking the name of the abortionist in Kansas who...
Tiller.
George Tiller. I'd never met George Tiller, so I can't tell you exactly what he's thinking. But on the other hand, it was my understanding that George Tiller, who did a considerable number of late-term abortions, actually had a crematoria on his property, and he was the only one who would work that crematoria. I don't know what his thought processes were. I can't even imagine that, but that's the only thing along those lines that I ever heard.
I never felt any euphoria with it. I think I suppressed most of my emotion and just wanted to get through it. I was doing it because of the money and just wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. So it basically suppressing the humanity of the child. But I'm very curious that 45 minutes with that child, what it must have been like for you, and if you endured any persecution for that.
Oh, holy cow. Well, it was a surreal experience. You know, if you're working in the hospital and you're kind of surrounded by blood and placenta, it's kind of natural, normal. But holding that baby, I was just like, what is going on in this world? And I'll say that at this point, this was in 1999, babies at that point at that age, were too young to save. So there was nothing that I could do to help that baby. But I remember I started out holding the baby. The baby was on his way to the soiled utility room because his parents didn't want to hold him, and my nurse friend didn't have time to hold him that night, which is why I held him. And I remember first going and sitting out at the nurse's station with the baby, and somebody came by and kind of lifted up the blanket. They were going to go, ooh, ooh, and then they went, ooh, and put the blanket, back down. And then the charge nurse asked me to go back into a recovery room, which was empty at that point, and kind of hide what I was doing, so to speak. But what I do remember is when he was still alive, their skin is so thin at that age. And I remember I had to hold him up against the light to see if I could see his heart beating through his chest wall. Mm-hmm. And when he passed away, I folded his little arms across his chest, tied them together with a little string, wrapped him in a shroud, and took him to the morgue where we took all of our dead patients. So the hospital knew exactly what it was doing. It was killing a child, a human being. I stayed at the hospital because I thought that even though I didn't know what was going on there, the Lord knew, and he put me there for a reason. And so, for the next 2 years before I quit, I worked midnights. I just got sick sometimes going to work, and was on final warning the whole 2 years that I was there. And I just kept praying to God that I wouldn't be fired for a professional lapse. On any given night, as you know, you can do anything like that they can term as being negligence or something. And I just prayed that if I was going to get fired, I was going to get fired for taking that stand, which is eventually what happened. I got fired for speaking out at the hospital. But there are hundreds or thousands of martyrs in the world every day, Christian martyrs that experience so much. And so, whatever happened to me was inconsequential as far as my feelings went.
Mm-hmm. What's amazing to me is that, and this goes to the division in our minds, but I remember I had a woman who ended up with an abdominal pregnancy. Her baby, I guess, was a cornwall pregnancy in the corner of the uterus, and it ruptured into the abdomen. And this baby was 16 weeks and alive. And when I opened her abdomen, because you can't just leave it, then she was bleeding. And I opened the abdomen, and I saw this perfect little sac and this perfect 16-week-old baby. And the mother very much wanted that pregnancy. And all I could do was deliver the baby. And we had done the C-section under epidural. And so I delivered the baby, and then all I could do was just give this baby to her to hold until the baby died. And yet I could turn right around and dismember a baby that size in the womb. And it's still inconceivable to me how that can happen. How can we be that way?
I think what you're talking about is like a blindness or something.
Yeah,
and
it's a blindness.
I'm guessing that's what you experienced. Just what was the awakening like when all of a sudden the blinders did come off?
I never believed that what I was doing was okay. I always felt that it was wrong, but I felt that I had to. I didn't feel like I had another option. So for me, there wasn't this moment of like realizing, oh, I committed murder. I think in my heart, I always knew that. It was just finally coming to the point that I admitted it to myself. Mm-hmm. And that was when I saw the humanity of my son and learned about his development and it was very, very hard. It was very shocking, and finally having to just come to terms with that was very painful.
Yeah, that blind, I call it a blackout moment. Every time I would go into an abortion appointment, I would literally shut down my mind, my thoughts, my emotions. I would shut down my senses. Anyone that tried to speak to me in that moment, I just would block them out. I would like black out, like as if, someone gets really drunk and they don't remember what happened the previous night or whatever, so that I could get through the appointment and then just deal with the emotional, mental consequences later. And it would work temporarily. It would work. And then when I would get through the emotions, however long that lasted, whether it was weeks or months, then it was somehow I went back to normal. And then I was able to do it again. And it wasn't until I broke free of the deception and I confessed what I was doing and I was honest about what I was doing, that all the pain really hit. All of the emotions, everything I had backed up inside of my mental, inside of my spirit, finally hit. And when it hit, thank God, I was in a place of healing. I was in a place of, I had, post-abortive ministry around me to help me carry that weight. So if I would have done that on my own, I think I would have I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'll say that. So I know many women, they go into these abortion appointments and it looks as if they are just okay with it. It looks as if they are, they woke up that morning like, yeah, I'm ready for this. But I can guarantee most of them are blocking something. They're turning off something in their heart so that they can go through that horrendous act.
I do have a quick follow-up question. Did you both go through abortion healing? If so, do you think it's kind of mandatory to help with healing or no?
I have had therapy, but not specifically for my abortions. I found out after being in therapy that my therapist was pro-choice, so she was not really able to help me heal. My healing has really just been through prayer and seeking God for help.
Okay.
I specifically went through a post-abortion Bible study, and it was written by a woman who was post-abortive herself, and she was led to help many women in this way. And so a lot of the homework assignments, the video series that goes along with it was specific to, going back into those dark moments and realizing what you've done, doing assignments where you're writing letters and you're forgiving, all parts of the abortion experience. And I remember one of the homework assignments, there was a prompt that we could write a letter to the doctor, the abortion doctor. I'll be honest, in that moment, I didn't have anything to write, but I was more ashamed of what the doctor thought of me.
Interesting.
Wow.
If that would allow me to lead into the question, what did you think of the women that came in there? What were they? Were they all, a certain type? Were they?
I think it's important, and I teach medical students, and I tell them it's very important to understand that there's nothing trivial about an abortion decision. I know a lot of people make it sound that way, and that's not really the case. Every single woman has her story, and every single woman is worried about one or a lot of different things. I'm worried about my future. I'm worried about my education. I'm worried about my finances. I'm worried about what my parents will think of me. And as an abortionist, I was the good guy. I was going to help you with that problem. And it's interesting how you talked about going in for abortion. You shut down X, Y, Z to be able to get through it. Understand, doctor does pretty much the same thing. I'm doing a service. I'm not stupid. I can see the arms and legs in the suction machine. Or if you're doing a D&E abortion like I used to do, I'm literally tearing out arms and legs this long. And you have to shut yourself down to be able to do that. So what do we think of you? Not a whole lot. I'm there to help your problem. But in the end, we, in a very real way, we were both going through the same thing.
And I pretty much felt like Tony. I felt like I was helping. I was where I was moonlighting. I was in Gainesville, so they were mostly college students. And I just felt that I was helping them. And so I certainly didn't have any negative feelings about them. I thought they were probably making the best decision for them. And I was there to help them. But again, I did. I saw the arms and legs, but I didn't connect. I did not see them as human beings. And so I didn't think I was shutting down or anything. I just was so blind, until I had my own baby and I made that baby fetus connection somehow, and God finally got through to me. I thought I was helping.
What did I think about you? Well, first, let's talk about the baby. We don't think about the baby. We talked about how we dehumanize the baby. So the baby's dehumanized. I just met you when I walked into that procedure room, the lie that this is a decision between the patient and the doctor. No, it's not, because you don't meet the patient till you walk in the room, and you don't even want to give them eye contact. So your baby ain't human, and you ain't human either, and I ain't human, so we got a bunch of inhumans killing a baby here, all right? And as soon as, if I were to make true eye contact with you and doctor-patient relationship, what's going to happen is a possibility of a cascade of events that might stop this abortion, and I won't get my check. Okay? So the reality is we got a job to do here. It's not a baby. It's just a procedure. We're going to get through this. As soon as I stand up from this stool and we get you out of your lithotomy position, I'm out of the room into the next room to do exactly the same thing to another human being, to another woman, to another baby. But there's something that the elephant in the room that we really haven't talked about, and that's the man. Where is the man? There's not one pregnancy. Yeah, there's not one pregnancy that didn't start with a man, except for one time. But where is the man that's supposed to be the protector, the provider, who could have been there for you, that could have been there for you, that says, no, we have a baby, human. We are going to make it through this. Even I think back to the own child of mine, the first child I had that I had killed. The baby was killed for my convenience. How come there's not something in a man that says, no, regardless of where I am, my education can still occur. This human being is going to be either brought up by us or adopted, and everybody can live. Everybody can survive. We don't have to get rid of a human being. But somehow we've been deceived in thinking that this is just a bump in the road that you can go through and everything is going to be okay. So we're not going to get through this until we bring men to accountability and men to manhood. Thank God you had the support structure, Claire. And if we would have only had that same support structure in manhood for you, but what's happened, particularly in the last several decades, true manhood and masculinity has been talked down upon, but a real man stands up for their children.
Yeah.
And yet there are cases where the man is trying to take responsibility,
Yeah.
doesn't want his child aborted, and is told, you have no say.
That was my case. My now husband, he was forced to stay outside and wait, and he didn't want me to abort. And I did so anyway, and I wish there was something in place where the man had such a say-so to where literally the woman would not be able to do that.
And we need more men like your husband. And if we did, that would substantially decrease the number of abortions.
Yes.
Because most of them, unfortunately, aren't like your husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
What saddens me now is that our young women for so many years now have been told that if you want to succeed in the world, if you want to get your education, and you have an unplanned pregnancy, you've got to abort, or you're going to be poor, you're going to never crawl out of the hole. And that is such a lie. The reason I had an abortion was because I was afraid. It was right before I was entering medical school, and I thought, if I'm pregnant, I won't be able to become a doctor. And then after I got there, I met all these women who had had their babies first, and then they went to medical school. And I know so many professional women that have had their children, they had their cake in '82, and that you don't have to have an abortion to succeed as a woman. That's the biggest lie, and it has given the government and business an easy out, because then they don't have to worry about maternity care, child care, or anything else. And we need to reverse that.
What I find interesting, listening to the three of your stories as women who have had abortions, is that right now we're so often told that the reason that we need abortion right now in our country is because of the life of the mother might be in danger, or the mother may have gone through rape or incest. And so we're being told that we need abortion mostly for those reasons. But what I'm hearing from each of you is that you had an elective abortion. It was a choice to have that abortion. And so my question for the three of you is, in your experience as former abortion doctors, when you entered that room to meet that woman for the first time to perform her abortion, did you know her circumstance? Did you know the reason that you were performing that abortion? And the reason I'm asking is because my birth mother was 13 when she had her abortion. And my birth mother, like both of you in your experience, because you've told me before, is that nobody spoke to her in the room that day. Nobody asked her what her choice would have been, what the reason was for having the abortion, what maybe they could have done to support her to be able to enable her to have the child if she wanted to. And so the doctor performed this abortion without knowing any of her circumstances, knowing that she was 13, not knowing if she was being coerced into this abortion by her mother who accompanied her. If you didn't know the circumstances and the child was young going in to have an abortion, did you ask more questions, or did you just perform the abortion? And aside from your experience, what do you think is common practice for doctors now that are still performing abortions?
My practice was a little different than some other doctors. We weren't running an abortion clinic. It was a regular OBGYN office. I didn't care one bit whether you wanted an abortion or wanted your baby, because I was going to take care of you either way. You wanted an abortion, great. You wanted to have your baby, great. I'm taking care of you in any case. And we very carefully counseled, which is not the normal experience, but we very carefully counseled all of our patients. Every one of our patients got an ultrasound. And we did not charge for that, because I didn't want to be in a position where I thought I was doing a 10-week abortion in the office, and it turned out to be a 14-week abortion. Now I'm going to get into trouble, and so is my patient. We knew the reason that every single woman was having an abortion, whatever that reason was. And I never walked into an abortion room having not met the patient ahead of time. We met every single patient ahead of time before the procedure to talk to them exactly that way. That's not necessarily the norm, but that was the way we did it. I think that's all I have to say about that.
So my experience was completely different. I was moonlighting at a clinic in Gainesville, so they were all college students. And I never did an abortion for an indicated reason. There were no health defects. There were no, not even any fetal defects. It was all basically convenience. And at that time, we had to have a reason for the abortion. So if they didn't have a good reason, I would say, well, is this going to stress you out emotionally or financially or socially? Because those were the parameters. And so I would come up with a reason, for them to have the abortion.
Recently, I wrote a letter that got published in the Arizona Republic because Arizona is the next state to coming up with this abortion anytime for any reason constitutional initiative on the ballot in November. And I wanted to make sure that people understood what it meant legally.
Yeah.
When the procedure at the paper is to print a little bit about the writer, and they included your email address. So I got, a little bit, not a lot, of hate mail from people. But I got one letter and one email from a woman that was very pro-choice, but respectful and, challenging in terms of answering her questions. And we went back and forth a little bit on email. It was interesting because she made the statement that, well, I don't think that Roe v. Wade willy-nilly allows abortion at any time during pregnancy or any reason. Ma'am, that's wrong. And I won't get into it here, but that is flat out wrong. It's not what the language is. It does allow that. More importantly, she made a statement that, and she talked about rape and she talked about incest. And she made a statement that said, I think that the majority of abortions are being done for these kind of reasons, and they're very rarely done on healthy moms with healthy babies. And I wrote back to her, thanked her for her comments, and we went back and forth for a little bit on email. And I told her, I said, I know you're not going to believe it, but this is the absolute truth. I did 1,200 abortions, first and second trimester. 1 was for rape, 2 were for incest, about 9 or 10 were for genetic defects like trisomy 21, and all the rest of them were healthy moms and healthy kids. People believe what they want to believe, and they don't want to believe that, but that is the truth.
Yeah. I think my most profound or eye-opening experience with abortion was, there's 2 parts. One was meeting my birth mother because she told me about her abortion. She was 13 years old, and I saw this deep pain and regret in her eyes. I knew, as soon as I saw it, I knew that I had never experienced a pain like that before, and it humanized the unborn baby for me because I am just like my twin. And so that definitely opened my eyes to the reality of abortion and what we're missing. And then I gave birth to my daughter. And I think so often we think about 2 groups when we think about abortion, the unborn baby and the woman, but we don't think about the generations that we're missing when it comes to abortion. And the day I had my daughter and I held her for the first time in my arms, I realized the miracle of her life. Because if one choice that my birth mother had made had been successful in my life, if I had been aborted, my little girl wouldn't be here. And so I realized that day the generational impact of abortion and just truly how many people are impacted through abortion and just through one woman walking through the doors of an abortion facility. That was life-changing for me because I had focused so many years on just me and my birth mother and our pain. But then to see my little girl, and she's cuter than me, and she's just the sweetest thing, and to think that we would be missing out on her because of that abortion.
Funny, I love movies, and this is going to be a little odd, but all I could think of was a line from Gladiator. What we do in life echoes into eternity.
My most profound moment was when I realized the humanity of my son, Hudson, and then having him and my 2 other children and getting to hold my children and seeing how much I love them and how worthy they are of life and dignity, and just realizing that I robbed my 2 children of that when I aborted them.
My most profound moment was when I realized and I was educated that abortion has disproportionately affected the Black community.
For sure.
And that I was a part of that number now. I was a part of that statistic. I had no idea that abortion was at one point targeted directly towards Black women and children and the fathers. And that it was mainly successful because of the silence in the Black community. And a part of that was when I found out that my mom canceled an abortion appointment with me. My mom and dad were scheduled to have an abortion appointment, and at the very last minute, my dad changed his mind and told my mom she would have to go through with the pregnancy. And so, like you mentioned earlier, doctor, my dad stepped in, and because of his fatherly protection, I'm here today. And so, how that comes together is, if my parents would have told me that story before I ever got to Planned Parenthood, I probably would have never aborted my children. So that, for me, was really full circle.
Wow.
When my wife and I married, we had an infertility problem, and after a tremendous amount of effort, we were able to adopt a little girl that we named Heather. And my wife after all this infertility, she got pregnant the very next month. So we had kids 10 months apart. 2 months short of Heather's 6th birthday, she was killed in an auto accident. And anyone who has children may think they have some idea of what that might feel like. But if you haven't been through it yourself, you have no idea. I talked earlier about turning off to do the abortion. And I don't remember how long it was after her death, but I showed up at OR number 9 at the hospital where I was working to do a second trimester D&E abortion. Wasn't thinking of it as anything special. This was routine. And I had other things on my mind. And I reached in with that sulfur clamp and I ripped out an arm or a leg that was this big, and I got sick. But once you start an abortion, you can't stop. You have to take inventory. You have to make sure that you get 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Because if you don't, your patient will come back infected, bleeding, or dead. So I finished that abortion. And I looked, after years and years and all those abortions, for the first time in my career, I looked. And I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see, and all my defenses fell apart. I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't see what a great doctor I was helping her with her problem, and I didn't even see the $800 I just made in cash in 15 minutes. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. That was the change. We talk about, it's human, and I've said earlier today, I didn't care. But once I saw that child, that mess that I had made, as someone's son or daughter, that changed everything.
I sort of had 2 big moments. One was after the birth of my daughter. I had done abortions the whole time I was pregnant with her. But something changed after her delivery, and when I went back to the clinic, I realized I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted. But I really didn't have a profound change because I still believed in abortion until someone gave me an article to read that compared abortion to the Holocaust. My dad was with the group that liberated the first concentration camp in Germany. So I grew up with all those pictures and stories and just could never understand how the German doctors could do what they did until I read that article, and I realized that just as I didn't see my victims as human beings, they didn't consider their victims as human beings. And suddenly everything became clear, and I realized that I was a mass murderer. And that was deeply disturbing. And I am just thankful that God was there to catch me and help me to heal and brought me to where I am today.
Well, I have a couple of revelations and a vision. We had my late wife and I had a honeymoon baby. We were married on Saturday and conceived on Wednesday.
Took you that long?
Hey, I was fighting each day. But Noreen always said she didn't want to have children. But I knew she would change her mind. But it's a very interesting thing. Children who are in the womb and not wanted actually can sense it. And with my post-abortion recovery work, many abortion or non-aborted kids know there's missing members in that family, and they just know. I've also experienced something just a few months ago as I've been humanizing my first child that I had killed, and I named him Daniel Stevlin. And I had this dream, I think it's about 3 or 4 months ago now, where there are no facial images. All I could hear in the dream was me saying, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I'm weeping. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then there's a few seconds, and he says, it's okay, Daddy. It's okay. And his voice just faded away as if he was going to go play. I would say about a 6 or 7 year old sounding voice. And it was just, oh, wow, it was overwhelming. I woke up just weeping. But how I knew I had somewhat of a closure that there's this child that I'll get a chance to meet. Who knows what age that child will be, in heaven, or what age I will be. But that child knows I'm forgiven. And even though he never had a chance to have a moment on earth, that personally said, it's okay, Daddy, it's okay.
Aw.
I have to say, as I was going through my healing process, part of it was going and getting prayer. And at one point, the woman who was praying with me said, do you want to see your child? And I said, yes. And I saw this little boy running through a field. And he turned his head and looked over his shoulder at me and said, I forgive you, Mommy. And that was just amazing. So it just reminded me of him looking over his, it's okay.
Well, as for me, of course, wouldn't be surprised that, my most profound experience was holding that little guy. What I found is, that after I got fired from Christ, I started speaking at pro-life events. And when I would tell the story of what happened at Christ with me and then other babies I knew of, that story had a profound impact on pro-lifers who, I'm pro-life, I'll come to this event, I'll support this pregnancy care center. And then they find out, their eyes are open and they're like, wow, abortion has really gotten pretty bad here. Now we're talking about fourth trimester abortion, so to speak. And so this little guy, who I will meet someday, has had a profound impact beyond me. And hitchhiking on that, Claire, speaking of profound, I wonder, like when pro-choice people hear your story, does it have an impact on them?
Yeah, I mean, I know that I have talked to a lot of people who are pro-choice. I actually have a lot of protesters will come to see me speak sometimes, and they have nothing to say. We can share our testimonies and they are completely silent, and I think it's because my humanity and the fact that I was a twin, the fact that when you look at me, you're looking at my twin, you're looking at the aborted baby, you're looking at the humanity of the aborted baby. They just can't deny it. I mean, all of our stories are so unique here. People cannot deny our stories. They cannot say that our stories, our experiences were not real. And so I do think that I've had that unique perspective. I know that all of you probably do not have that response from pro-choicers, but I think that I do have that unique perspective of people are able to recognize the humanity of the unborn child, and the simple fact that they don't want to makes them turn away or totally silences them. And I think a lot of times they shut down too, because they don't want to hear it. Yeah. And I've had some instances where I've shared my story with somebody and they become angry because it exposes something in their belief system of, oh my gosh, this is morally convicting to what I've been preaching or screaming about or shouting my abortion about for so long. And it does ignite something in them. And I think that that's why God gave me my testimony, and that's why I'm here.
Remember when you're giving a presentation, when people come and scream at you, the ones that scream the loudest are the ones that hurt the most.
Yeah. I've recognized that over the years. And I always have somebody in the audience who comes up to me and says, "Oh my gosh, Claire, I had an abortion 20 years ago and I have not spoke about it," or "I took my girlfriend to have an abortion," or "I took my daughter to have an abortion," or "I was silent when my friend came to me and said, I'm considering having an abortion." And it's able to start a healing process in them as they hear my testimony, but also my forgiveness for my birth mother is something that I never leave out of my story.
And I'm so thankful that you've forgiven us, you know, sort of as representatives of those that were the perpetrators.
I had a question. Did you name the baby? Was it a boy, girl? Or?
I didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but I just never did. No.
Was it a boy?
It was a boy. It was a little boy. Yeah. Abortion impacts everyone, even if they don't know it, just purely on the demographic level, because more girls are aborted than boys in foreign countries, for instance. We know from stats that at least over the past 2 decades, at least 1 billion babies have been aborted worldwide. That's like 1/8 of the population of the world. And when you think about, for instance, a country like China, you know, they had the one-child policy now too. Girls were aborted. There's a huge lopsided sway of boys over girls. These boys will never get married. My thought is perfect candidates, you know, to take that testosterone and, you know, be weapons in an army. Who knows where that's going to lead? And it also has a huge impact on child trafficking worldwide too, because girls are at a premium, especially, you know, in Asia, in Eastern countries. And those are just 2 consequences that people don't realize are affecting them. And it's probably in the future going to impact us very badly in ways we don't know yet.
Well, does that process end? I think the process of healing and grieving on some level continues till the day you die. For one purpose, it's that we're never perfected in our grief and sorrow. It's something that's part of our past and you can't erase it. It can be forgiven and it is covered in the blood. However, we are physical, mortal beings with those scars. We will always see those scars. But the benefit of that is that the fruit of recognizing and having that grief is that we can still make a greater impact on others who haven't realized that same grief. And does everyone get to the point where they can have that grief? Unfortunately not. You know, my wife and I happened to be in Nebraska last week at the in Carhart's, the late Dr. Carhart's clinic there, or facility, where thousands upon thousands of babies were killed, and he was Tiller's understudy.
Exactly.
I don't know what can happen on the deathbed, but he may have died after going through a lifetime where he was in his 80s, shuffling from room to room, killing late term and, you know, earlier term babies. There is a point, we don't know what it is, and I'm not going to pretend that I know that, where a person can become reprobate, where a person has gone too far, and may God have, you know, mercy on their soul.
You know, I don't think on a more personal level, I don't think any woman can kill her child and remain unscathed.
Yeah.
And it's either after she has another baby, she suddenly realizes what she has done, or the fact that she can't have another baby, or it could be the loss of a friend's baby or whatever. But I think eventually they realize what they have done. Unless you say they're so reprobate, you know, they're totally blank. But I think it's a lie that abortion is the solution and it'll make everything better. I think that's a blatant lie, because I think eventually they will regret what they have done.
I killed 1,200 kids. How can you make up for even one of them? I can't. So now I do everything I can to save as many as I can.
And I agree. I'm so thankful that God has given me the platform He has, that He's taken the very worst thing in my life and turned it into good. And my poor husband, every time something comes up, I say, honey, is it all right if I go? He said, I don't want to be the one that stops one baby from being saved. And so he's a gem. Yeah.
It's my hope that there's maybe an abortionist who may watch this video and whose heart is changed. And there will be no telling how many other babies are going to be saved because of this wonderful ministry and Lila and Live Action. Just all of us making that impact and knowing that God can anoint this medium of video.
That's why we're all here.
One way I've dealt with grief is to get rid of the lie that healing happens overnight. And because, going to that appointment, having those multiple abortions did not happen overnight. And so how can I expect, a traumatic thing like that to just disappear so I tell myself and I tell girls that I get a chance to speak to who are both post-abortive and are hurting that healing is a lifetime, and God is so gracious and so gentle, but with a firm grace to get us to each level of our healing journey and help us in those points, even this here today. No matter how many times I've spoken, I didn't know I was going to cry this much here at this table. But even this here today has healed more parts of my heart that I didn't even know were still unanswered and hurting. And so that is one way I grieve. It's just every moment that a new area is touched, I just deal with it. I get through it. I have the Bible. I have prayer. I have my tools ready. And I have a great community of other leaders and those who have healed for many more years than myself to reach out to. So that is the key thing. So do not do this healing journey alone.
I agree with Gigi. The thing that has helped me to heal the most is sharing my story and to also try and keep other women from making this choice and just bringing glory to God by sharing the truth. That has been very healing.
The way that I have healed the most, I think, is through choosing to forgive. And it's a choice that every day I have to wake up and make because my circumstances don't change. I will always wake up every single day as an abortion survivor. My circumstances surrounding my birth, being aborted, unwanted, rejected, those circumstances never change. But every day I can wake up and I can choose to forgive and I can choose to not let my circumstances define me. And I think that God gave me the perfect family, the perfect parents for me because it was modeled to me in my home. My parents forgave us in so many ways. We knew about the forgiveness that was available through Jesus and what He did for us on the cross. And our parents were very intentional with us in laying this foundation of who we were. And so we knew all our lives that we were wanted, chosen, and loved by our parents, and we were forgiven by them and by God. And so I think that my healing journey, yes, has been through meeting other people and through sharing my testimony, but ultimately in every day waking up and choosing to forgive because I've been deeply impacted by abortion. It has taken so much from me. It's been incredibly painful, but it's not who I am. At the end of the day, it's just something that happened to me and a testimony that God gave me and He can use for good.
I just think that we're all testimonies of prayer. And so I just want to encourage all of us to pray for abortion workers, abortion doctors, post-abortive women, men and women that are considering abortion, because obviously God is moving, he's working, and when we see them and when we're like upset at their ignorance, their deception, their blindness, we all must remember that the God of this world has blinded these people and they need prayer, they need salvation and deliverance and healing. So this is just so encouraging that, yeah, it's not over. There's still work to be done.
And they are where we were once.
Yes.
Exactly.
Some of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 We're in it to win it one day at a time. Jesus leaves with the 99 to come after the one. And when you're lost, he finds you. Many people say, well, how did you find Jesus? I said, yeah, I'm lost. He found me and saved me. And that same, we're here about abortion and pro-life stuff, but it really boils down to it's about Jesus, how he can transform us. We are honored and blessed to be working under the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he is a lot more offended than us by this whole taking of the innocents, and particularly through abortion. But this is the taking of innocent life is not new, and it's been going on this planet for millennia. It's just that right now abortion is the key method that the enemy is using to take the volume of human life on a global Holocaust magnitude.
I have a question before we all go. Could we all share like one testimony you have seen or heard from you speaking or sharing since being in the pro-life movement?
I have one that is the most compelling thing that I have heard. And it was a radiologist who sat in on a pregnancy reduction. And if you don't know what that means, it means that a woman has 2 or more babies in her womb, and the doctor says, well, it's going to put your risk at life and the baby's, lives at risk if you have triplets or if you have twins. And so they go in under ultrasound and they'll inject one baby with potassium chloride or whatever to kill the one baby so that the other babies have a better chance. And I guess this woman had triplets, and the OB guy said, "You want to watch?" And she said, "Sure." And so here's this mother watching and father watching, and this radiologist watching this OB trying to stick a needle into this one baby. And every time he does, the baby reacts and backs away. And the baby kept doing that. And finally, the woman is in tears. And so they turn the screen around. Finally, after he couldn't get that one baby, he started trying to stick another baby. And the radiologist at that point couldn't stand it anymore and left. And I just think that sometimes some of the evil is encased in language that we don't really comprehend. So it doesn't sound so bad to have a pregnancy reduction. You don't really know what that means. And yet to hear him talk about it was just devastating.
The other side understands very well that to control language is to control thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I have an odd one. Early on, I was asked to go on the Bill O'Reilly show, and if you know who he is, he's outspoken. I didn't know who he was then. I didn't have cable, fortunately, and so I'm in Chicago. He's in New York. I'm looking at a camera, and I tell my story, and like at points, like I'm answering the interview questions like I'm supposed to, and then I stop, and then like nothing was happening. And I thought that after I left the interview, I thought that was a bad interview. Like, I'm no good at this, that I don't know when I should be speaking up more and taking up more of the air in the room. And then I saw the interview, and when there was silence, it was Bill O'Reilly reacting like he couldn't talk. He was just sitting there shaking his head. That interview went on to be replayed as one of his 5 highlights of the year that December.
Oh, wow.
And it was because, like, I shut up, basically. And, which is to say, sometimes, like, it's okay to to just sit there and tell your story and not necessarily look for any words to come back at you, but like let it sink into people and have an impact on them quietly.
Well, I had the opportunity. I think most of us here at the table know the Abby Johnson and her experience. Well, I happened to meet Abby Johnson the day after she walked out of the Planned Parenthood facility. She walked out of there and right down the street to the 40 Days for Life office at the time, 1 block away. And the day after she walked out, Sean Carney, the CEO of 40 Days for Life, brought her over to my office and my late wife's office, and we sat down there with this one-day newborn Abby Johnson.
Wow.
And in a way, I was able to see face to face what it's like for someone that's literally a newborn into the pro-life movement. She'd seen something, an abortion-guided or ultrasound-guided abortion, and God gave her, opened her eyes, the scales dropped off.
Yes.
But to watch the fear that the enemy was putting in her, that she wasn't going to be able to take care of her family, what she was going to do, but it just so happens God has a way of having his people around. So Noreen and I were able to be there with her and say, Abby, this is going to be okay. You're going to make it. Your family's going to do okay. And now we see this woman out there who is impacting thousands of other abortion workers globally.
Yes.
Because the Lord set her free and she trusted God. And I think after she left Planned Parenthood, she must have, 3 or 4 more kids after she did that.
7.
She had 7 more?
Seven.
She only had 1 at a time?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, shows you how God is truly about pro-life, isn't it?
Well, through social media, I've been able to see women go through the post-abortion program that I've gone through. I've had the opportunity to lead them through and watch them get, healed, and then also see babies' lives saved just by talking to their mothers when they were in crisis pregnancy situations, pointing them to pregnancy centers and seeing them choose life for their babies, and now getting to see them grow up on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform. I get to see their pictures. And so that is just, could never replace, what I've gone through and the babies I took their lives. But just seeing life for life, is rewarding.
For me, it has been really rewarding I've had several women, post-abortive women, come to me and tell me that I helped to give them the courage to share their story. And I have not always felt courageous in sharing. So that has been really great.
Yeah.
It's so neat. Yeah, I definitely have women who've come up to me and men who've come up to me who have had abortion experiences and have said, oh my gosh, if you could forgive your birth mother, I wonder if my child could forgive me. And that's been really neat to be able to walk through or open that door for people to dive into the healing process and be able to name their child and to be able to forgive themselves and to allow God to forgive them. And so that's been really neat because that's something that I prayed for my birth mother that she would find for so many years. But I'll never forget, I started to share my story. I was kind of thrown into sharing my testimony really soon after Abby left her job because I met my birth mother around that time, and I hadn't healed. I hadn't even really met anybody else who had been affected by abortion, but I was thrown into sharing my story. And I'll never forget finding out the resources that were available to women through pregnancy resource centers and adoption agencies and all these things that you don't hear about because everybody says, oh, we only care about the baby. We don't do anything for the woman. And realizing that women can call an abortion facility right now and ask for support. They can ask for diapers and wipes and all these things, and there's nothing available for them. Yeah. But then they can call a pregnancy resource center and be given everything they need for their baby. Everything that my birth mother said that she would have helped her choose life, would have empowered her to know that she could be a mother, that she was strong and capable of that. And knowing that they're giving all of this to them free of charge,
Right.
just from the kindness of their heart, walking alongside them, and up to 2 or 3 years after they have their baby. That was life-changing for me. And realizing, my family and I, we had not talked about abortion until I learned that I was affected by it. And I realized too, in the first couple times that I shared my story, that my family, and so many of us are guilty of that, my family's unwillingness to get uncomfortable and talk about things that are truly affecting us, like abortion, was actually sending women into abortion clinics as their safe place. And it was not allowing women to know that there is somewhere that they can go and that they can come to us. And so I think the most eye-opening thing for me at the beginning was just realizing, oh my gosh, there is support for women like my birth mother. And it is not behind the doors of an abortion facility. It is in the church, it is in the pregnancy resource centers, it is in the adoption agencies. And if my birth mother had only known that that was available to her, I might be sitting here with my twin next to me.
My wife and I founded a pregnancy center in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and we made sure it was located across from my office because I was the first medical director, so I could help them after they took their ultrasound courses to shepherd them doing ultrasounds. And one young lady, I'll never forget, I ran over and the director said, "This lady's very, very hard on abortion, and we'll see what happens." And I walk in the room and, "Hi, I'm Dr. Levitina. We're going to do your ultrasound." Stone cold, just staring straight ahead, didn't say a word. Do the ultrasound. There's the baby's heart. There's the baby moving. There's the baby's fingers. And again, just stone cold. And I walked out and I said, well, you can't win them all. The next day, the director called me and said she changed her mind.
Yeah.
And another one was not quite that hard a situation, but a young lady turned out to have twins. And I still have the ultrasound in my laptop that I show students. 29 days from conception, twins, 2 heartbeats going on the screen at the same time. And the pregnancy center has a picture of those 2 boys, identical twins, when they were age 5 on the wall to remind people of that we're there. And it grates me when I hear, the frankly baloney about, well, these are fake clinics. There's nothing fake about a pregnancy center. Of course, the people who say that have probably never even been inside of a pregnancy center.
Right.
But it's the pregnancy centers that are giving women real choice. So many women are exercising their choice because they think they have no choice.